What is going on? Raider Soda Dragon here. Welcome and hope you guys are doing well. So since we just finished the Uko fusion, guess what's next? Of course, the next fusion. So yes, we've gotten details on who this champ is going to be, and she looks kind of crazy. So guys, check this out. Just in time for October, we get another creepy champ, and she is Marinick. So she's legendary champion of the Forest Affinity, and she is from the Dark Elves faction. So guys, check this out. Playerm says she will be good not only in PvP, now she's an attack champion, so hopefully she'll be doing a ton of attacking, that is, have good damage multipliers and wreck people, but she's supposedly also good in PvE as well against enemy waves. So those tough Doom Tower enemy waves, she supposedly can help you get through those. So since I haven't looked over her skill kit at all, and we're looked through it together, everything I'm gonna say as far as opinions on it are going to be my first impressions. All right guys, let's start with the A1 here, Reaper's Dew. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Has a 50% chance to place up to 2 extra hits if the target is under a hex debuff. The chance to place each extra hit is calculated individually per hit. So guys, the first thing you notice here is that you cannot increase the chance to get those extra hits. It's only a 50% chance, period. The books do not increase it, they only increase the damage. But second thing to notice is that they only happen, that extra chance to get those hits, they only happen if the target is under hex debuff. Now, thankfully, she can place enemies under hex. She has an AoE hex, which is good. But without that, she's not gonna get the chance for that extra hit. So guys, the way Playerm has explained this extra hit mechanic is that there's a limit to it. The maximum is 4 hits out of the A1. So that is the absolute max that you can get if you're attacking an enemy that is hexed with her. So guys, what's my opinion on the A1 here? Well, it's hard to say for an attack champion without knowing the damage multipliers, because this A1 is just meant to do damage. It doesn't debuff or anything like that. So yeah, it's really hard to judge without knowing the damage multipliers. But that being said, here's what I hope Playerm is not doing. I hope they don't see the extra hit mechanic here and therefore put a low damage multiplier on the A1, because people could possibly get more hits out of it. I really hope they don't go there. I hope this A1 hits hard without the extra hits. That's what I'm really hoping. And then once you do get the extra hits, man, there's like extra damage on top of everything. So I really hope it's more of that type of A1 where standalone without hex, just hitting a target, it does pretty good damage. But if the target is hexed and you get those extra hits, man, you're wiping out that target. All right guys, on to the A2 here, Excruciate. Attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a hex debuff and a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. On a 4-turn cooldown, bookable to 3. Now the way hex works in this game is it's very individualistic. Hex by itself doesn't do anything, but depending on who you bring in and their passives, different champs can take advantage of it differently. So we're going to talk about how she takes advantage of hex in a second, but you have AoE decreased defense and AoE hex, bookable to 100% chance to land on a booked 3-turn cooldown. So even without the hex, AoE decreased defense strong version on a booked 3-turn cooldown, very, very good. So add in the hex, add in champions that can take advantage of hex, like maybe her, Mithrala, etc. This is a really good skill. So AoE hex on a 3-turn cooldown, plus that decreased defense, very, very good A2. All right guys, on to the A3 here, Inexorable End. Attacks all enemies. Will ignore unkillable buffs and shield buffs if targets are under a hex debuff. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy without a hex debuff. Places an unkillable buff for 2 turns instead if this attack kills an enemy under a hex debuff. On a 6-turn cooldown, bookable to 4. So here is our Leorius and Skull Crown killing skill right here. So if enemies are under hex, she can ignore shields and ignore unkillable, which is really good. And this is an AoE now. It's booked to a 4-turn cooldown, which isn't too bad for what could be a hard-hitting AoE skill that ignores unkillable and shield. So that part of it is definitely good. Now this attack can buffer with unkillable if she kills somebody with this AoE. Now, if she kills somebody under a hex debuff with this AoE, then she's going to get 2 turns of unkillable on herself. But if she only kills somebody not under a hex debuff, then she only gets 1 turn of unkillable. Now, I'm not too big on how this unkillable is activated on her. So take example Leorius. How does his unkillable activate? Well, he takes damage. He gets close to death and then they put that unkillable on him. So how does it activate with Skull Crown? She takes damage, and when she's close to death, that unkillable procs. Well, what about this girl? How does this unkillable proc? Not for her taking damage, so it's not as a protective measure against her being killed. It's when she kills somebody that she gets that unkillable buff. So there's potential here for this to be good against prolonged fights, okay? But in arena fights, if this is potentially your arena nuker, this is not gonna be that good. Because if you're going first with her and she's an attack champ, I don't know why you wouldn't try. Yeah, really, you don't need this. You should be nuking down and killing that other team. There shouldn't be this really long back and forth. And even if there's a back and forth, it's not guaranteed that she's going to get that unkillable buff like with Leorius. All he needs to do is take damage. That protective measure is always there for her. She needs to kill somebody. So can she? I mean, against a really tanky team in the arena, can she kill somebody to get that unkillable buff in this prolonged fight? I mean, maybe. I'm just saying, I don't really like how that unkillable procs. I don't like the conditions that it procs under. So guys, overall, I do like the first part of this A3 where if enemies are under hex debuffs, she will ignore unkillable and shield buffs. So I like that part, that's good. But as far as the putting unkillable on herself if she kills somebody, for PvP, I don't think that's really gonna make too much of a difference. But for PvE, that might allow her more sustainability. Now, it's not really the best scenario for sustainability. Obviously, you want to proc unkillable before you're gonna die, like Skullcrown and Leorius, right? Not when you're trying to kill people or you're actively killing people or you succeed in killing people. That's not really the point where you think, oh, I need unkillable right now. I just knocked off someone on the enemy team. So I think for PvP, the second part of this, probably not too useful, but as far as PvE, yes, this unkillable buff might be useful. But overall, yes, I do like this A3. All right, guys, on to the passive here, Death's Collector. Resets the cooldown of the Inexorable End skill whenever this champion kills an enemy under a Hex debuff. Increases this champion's attack by 5% for each enemy under a Hex debuff. So what do I think about this passive? Well, with regard to the first part of it, where the cooldown of the A3 is reset if she kills somebody, I think that's a good thing. But what does that require? It requires that she can kill people. What does that require? Good damage multipliers and good base attack, which we don't know. Those are two things we don't know. We get sometimes a weird mix of high damage multiplier and low base attack in this game, and sometimes the reverse. You have high base attack and low damage multiplier. So really, to hit hard, obviously we need a moderate amount at least of both. So that's something we really don't know yet. So as far as the first part of this passive, it's very hard to tell if this is even useful. If her damage multipliers are low or her base attack is low, then who cares if she can cool down the A3 if she kills somebody, if she can't kill anybody, right? Who cares about that? So it's very hard to tell. Now, with regard to the second part of this passive where she increases in attack depending on how many enemies have that Hex debuff, it's a little scary to me. Here's why. Once again, like with the A1, I hope Plarium isn't thinking too far ahead and thinking, well, what if people cast AoE Hex against the spider and all the spiderlings, right? And think about how much additional attack she's gonna get, right? That's a ton. That is a ton. And man, she could like wipe out all the spiderlings and wipe out that main spider. I mean, at least in early levels, way too easily. So I'm kind of thinking like Plarium would think. So therefore, we can't make her too strong. We can't make her multipliers too high. We can't give her too high of a base attack because this passive could be taken advantage of. I really hope they don't think that way. That's why the second part of the passive is scary to me. Of course, we would try to take advantage of this passive as players. Of course, we like advantages. What am I gonna purposely go into a battle with a disadvantage or an advantage? I mean, come on, as many advantages as possible, right? So, if they're not thinking too far ahead, then that'd be great if this is just additional damage for her. So that'd be really good if, even if no one was under Hex, she hits pretty hard. And then we add in enemies under Hex, and man, she hits even harder. That would be great. So that's the situation I'm hoping for. So overall, what do I think about this champion? Well, for a second, let's just pretend that she's not an attack champion. So it says attack there, but just let's say it says support or something like that, okay? What would I think about her as far as her utility, buffs, debuffs, that type of thing? Well, the problem is we can't really think of her like literally just as a support champ. There are some champions you can. You could really use them as either attack champions or as debuffing champions. They really have both in their kit, and depending on what you need, it's kind of like interchangeable sometimes. The problem with her kit is that a lot of it relies on her killing people. So we can't just take her as a pure support champ like you can with other champions in this game that are supposedly attack champions, but have a pretty good set of buffs and debuffs. We can't take her just that way because too much relies on her killing people. So we have to take her as attack champ. And like I said, without knowing her damage multipliers, it's very hard to say at that point. But if she had good damage multipliers, you're in a difficult place too, because she has a lot of debuffs. That's the thing. So what are you going to build her for? Damage? Or are you going to build her for debuffs? You're going to build her for accuracy? Which one is it going to be? Because if you try to build for both, you're going to miss out on maximizing either or. If you just built her for pure attack, forget the accuracy. Of course, she would hit harder than if you tried to build for both attack and accuracy, right? So the question is, what are you going to do when you use this champion? She seems like she has a lot. But that being said, she might be difficult to build for because you're wondering, well, am I going to build her for attack or am I going to build her for her debuffs or a little bit of both? And is she good enough to function in that little bit of both role? So guys, here would be a great example of an attack champion that can function as both a support champion if you want him to be a support champion, or do damage as an attack champion if you want to primarily build for that damage. So I'm a ninja here. Do you want to build him for his debuffs? Sure. His AoE freeze, HP burns, you want to build him for that. His decreased attack? Sure. But you can also build him for pure damage. So you can do that as well. So he can kind of be both. He can be your hardcore damage dealer with debuffs. He can kind of be your accuracy / attack champion. Or you can build him for pure debuffs, the way I use him. I don't have him in a crit damage glove. I don't have him in attack percentage chest. I have HP percentage for both. Why? He's a support champ. That's the way I see him, and that's the way I use him. And he functions really well as both because nothing relies on him killing people. Yeah, he kills a lot of people, but nothing relies on it. That's the thing. So you can use him for long extended boss battles, and nothing relies on, at this moment, he has to kill somebody to get this or that buff. So guys, am I going for her? Honestly, it's hard to say. Here's why. As I already mentioned, I don't know her damage multipliers yet, so she's not as enticing to me as of yet. I really have to know how hard she hits because so many of her skills rely on her killing people. But another thing is I'm going on vacation in October, so I don't know if I have enough time. Now, if she seems like a really great champ, I may try to make the time and just play a ton on mobile, which I normally don't do. But unless she really looks like top tier, I might not go for her. So that's just my opinion. But guys, let me know in the comments what you think about her and if you plan to go for her. So thanks for watching, guys. And if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, and share. Turn on all notifications. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.